Julie Brar, welcome to the Herban Farmacy Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Yes, I am very excited to share your insights and glean some of your wisdom today. And I know my audience will be very excited about it as well. I know you're also in the plant-based space. And before I start asking questions, I just wanted to give a little high-level overview of what you do. Julie is a health practitioner and autoimmune specialist. She's also an author, and she helps people get to the root cause of their autoimmune and parasite issues. And she helps people reverse their Hashimoto's and lose 10 pounds through detoxification and cell regeneration. So you do a lot, Julie, and I know that you have been in this wellness game for a really long time, and I just cannot wait to learn more about everything that you offer and how you help people, and also your own personal journey. So I wanted to kick this off with, where in the world did your holistic journey start? Where did it start? How'd it go?
Well, I just want to go back to the to the bio for a second.
Sure.
Um, I help so with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, weight is often the thing that a lot of women fixate on. And the weight is really a result of the chronic and systemic inflammation. So once we address the root cause of the systemic inflammation, the weight starts to come off. And it is not uncommon for someone to lose like 10 pounds a month, uh, depending on how much weight it is or inflammation it is that someone is carrying. Yeah, so for myself, this all started because I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, and that diagnosis came about a year and a half after my husband passed away very, very suddenly. And I mean, the questions for me really started after he passed because he was one of, quote unquote, one of those people who looked healthy. So when someone who looks healthy dies very, very suddenly from a heart attack, um, it definitely kicked up my questions within me of like, how did he, like, how long was he sick? What happened? What signs did I not notice? And could this have been prevented? And then, of course, because of the suddenness of the event and how traumatic it was, I mean, I came home and I found him. It's, the worst moments and the worst day of my life. Um, it was such a shock to my system that eventually I ended up getting that diagnosis of hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. But that's what happens when you go through such a traumatic event, and it creates so much systemic stress and chaos in the body. And I'm talking about this very calmly, uh, but that was over 13 years ago. So I've had a lot of time to process and move through the pain, the grief. But that was the impetus for me to get on this journey. And when I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, and I was struggling with depression and gut issues and all kinds of things. And as soon as I figured out that the medications weren't going to really get to the bottom of what was happening in my body, then I wanted to figure out, like, okay, I know the body can heal. Like we spoke just before we started. Like, I know the body can heal because I taught yoga for a long time. And so I was in this kind of holistic world, but I didn't really know the ins and the outs of it. And so that's what I wanted to figure out.
Wow, that's really powerful. And it's also um, a very sad story that is so traumatic. But what I think is so important to share with that, Julie, is that these diseases are not just from environmental toxins, our poison food, our poison water, but from trauma and overstimulated nervous systems. And it's amazing how much we can hold all of that in our body and how it can manifest into dis-ease Wow. So can you talk more about what symptoms you were having that led you to want to figure out or to look deeper into what was going on?
So for me, what I was experiencing was like weight gain. That was like kind of like the first thing. But I had a lot of inflammation in my body, like every joint in my body hurt. I would get up in the morning and I couldn't stand up straight because my ankles, my knees, my back, um, it all hurt. And I was dutifully like I did the thing that people are supposed to do. You start to feel off, you go to the doctor does a bunch of tests, and then you get quote unquote the diagnosis and the so-called solution. And so I was doing that. I was taking medications every single day, and my life wasn't improving. Like I felt worse and worse and worse as time went on. And so that really got me to start thinking about like, okay, well, if the medications aren't really helping, number one, why am I taking them every day? And then number two, like, what can I do? Now, what I understand now about thyroid issues is that there's so many like nuances to thyroid issues, especially to hypothyroidism. So often the thyroid gets blamed, but it may not exclusively be the thyroid. It could be the pituitary, it could be the liver, it could be the gut, it could be all of those elements, and the way that they're interplaying with each other. Because remember, everything in our body is connected. It's a community and they talk to each other. And especially when it comes to the thyroid, the adrenals, pituitary, gut, liver, like there's a lot of stuff that's going on there. And so in my case, the reasons the medications weren't working is because it was not my thyroid. It was actually my liver, my gut, and my pituitary that needed support. And so I focused in on those areas. I was able to reverse hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, something that I was told by multiple doctors just would not be a possibility for me, that I would have to be on medication for the rest of my life. And as more time went on, the dosages would keep increasing. And this month, we're recording this in January of 2026. I am celebrating 6 years completely off medication. And I feel amazing. In fact, it keeps getting better and better.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so incredible. And I can really resonate with your story, Julie, or just with thyroid issues in general, because when I gained 25 pounds in 1 month. This was, yeah, it hit, oh my God, my body hurt so bad, by the way, too. It was awful. And that was right after I went off of birth control that I had taken for 16 years. And I was then diagnosed with acute hypothyroidism. And I am still on my healing journey, but completely faithful that I will 100% be all the way better soon enough. I am on that path and feeling good. And so it is an issue that I feel many people are actually dealing with undiagnosed. And like you said, so many things in the body are just so completely connected. And eventually dis-ease is going to manifest if we aren't taking care of all systems. So
Interestingly, a lot of uh, women don't know that there is a connection between birth control and thyroid issues.
yes. Yeah. Direct link, and also a direct link of depleting your B vitamins,
Which will happen if you go through trauma and stress.
Mhm. So what was your first step to help you on your healing journey? I mean, I know that you said you were kind of addressing three different things at once. What did you start to do? Was stress management part of this? Was diet? How did you approach it?
Well, I specifically, like, looked at, I actually did a program that addressed the quality of my food, worked on gut health, worked on parasites, heavy metal detox. So that was like a big part of it. And actually, by the end of 6 months on that protocol, I was off the meds. And since then, it's like I've continued to do like nervous system regulation. In the process of just writing my book last year, I really, it's sitting right here, shameless plug.
Beautiful. Finding light.
Yeah. When I was in the process of writing my book last year, I just really came to this realization. I was like, oh my God, I've been in a state of fight or flight my entire life because of because of the journey that I've been on. And so, especially the last, I would say 3, 4 years, I've done a lot in terms of working on regulating my nervous system and finding different ways to support it. You know, and that is a variety of things, like really paying attention to the thoughts and working on meditation and mindset, doing forgiveness work, doing healing work, grounding, consciously grounding every single day, and not filling up my calendar as much, saying no to things, saying no to clients that don't align, saying no to opportunities that don't align, like just becoming very, very focused on what it is that I want to do without, like so many women I see, they're like just running all the time. And I feel for them because it's like when you're in that state, the body can't really truly heal. Um, and even if somebody is being very mindful of their nutrition, how much their body is actually absorbing is, becomes a little bit questionable because of how stress impacts our gut health and nutrient absorption. So there are these levels and layers that a lot of people unfortunately don't understand in how their body works. And part of what I do is really try to break down for someone like how the different puzzle pieces go together. Like it's not just nutrition, it's just not just sleep, it's not just movement, it's not just like getting the heavy metals and the parasites out. It's really about bringing those different elements together cohesively in a way that's supportive. Now, I would say that probably the starting place for anyone really is starting to regulate their nervous system, because as they do that, all of the other work they do is going to be better received by the body.
And what are some of your top tips for regulating the nervous system?
Sleep, sleep, definitely sleep. Um, doing movement that is uh, yoga is probably one of my favorite things to do, just in terms of slowing down the breath, slowing down movement. So doing like restorative type practices, or even if somebody prefers flow or power classes, slowing down those movements, being very mindful of the breath, not just like jumping from pose to pose to pose. Um, yeah, so sleep, how you move, really becoming aware of your thoughts, right? Because our thoughts create our reality. So noticing like if your thoughts are running you, if you're having like, stressful thoughts about things that haven't even happened, which is what a lot of us we tend to do, is like our mind is like always in a state of either living in the past or projecting into the future and constantly missing the now. And so, I'm a big believer in meditation. I've done meditation for a very, very long time. And I mean, it's how I start every single day. And so those are some of the ways. And then obviously time in nature, away from all your devices, leave the phone at home. And whether that's, walking outside or cycling outside, whatever it is, but just having some time outside away from technology.
Such good, fundamental, and oftentimes free things that you can do to support your nervous system, that many people are missing out on. And like you said, Julie, if we have an unregulated nervous system, that can affect our nutrient absorption. So I would love to go into that a little bit. Um, how do you help people address gut issues, things that might be holding them back from assimilating and absorbing the nutrients that they need, um, outside of stress management, which is in nervous system support? Dietarily, what are you doing? And then also, if you want to elaborate on that, things that might help to clear out what might be stopping that absorption. So that's a loaded question, but
Yeah, so there's like levels, levels and layers to that question. First of all, everybody's gut is in some form of compromise, right? We've all been exposed to chemicals and metals, heavy metals, and pathogens and parasites and food colorings and additives and herbicides and pesticides. So everybody's gut is messed up. You know, the assumption that a lot of people make is that everything that they're eating is being utilized by their body. And that's completely incorrect. Because if your gut is compromised, chances are that a lot of what you're putting into your body isn't being absorbed at all. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody just last week, and she was talking about how she had a diagnosis of she was celiac, and they actually did an examination of her gut and found that the villi in her gut were completely glued down to the intestinal walls. And that is the state for a lot of people because everybody's been exposed to glyphosate. We're breathing it in, it's coming into our body through our skin because it's a water-soluble compound. And so what people assume and what is actually happening in reality are two separate things. So that's just the exposure that our gut has to all of these toxins. If someone drinks alcohol, it's going to affect the permeability of the gut. Glyphosate also affects the gut in that state, like it creates leaky gut. So these things, and if someone's on pharmaceuticals, that's going to affect your gut health. And so the first part is actually starting to repair the lining of the gut, and there's different ways to do that, as well as addressing the heavy metals and the parasites within the gut, and supporting the gut microbiome so that as the gut starts to heal, the nutrients that you are putting in are better utilized and better absorbed. And that's a process. There's like 2 or 3 different herbals that I work with, depending on the person and the situation. And that's the entry point. And then the other part of that equation is obviously addressing the quality of the diet, getting rid of the GMO foods and the additives and the preservatives and the acid forming foods that most people have in their diet.
yeah, glyphosate is a huge issue, and it is destroying people's gut little by little. I learned more about this from Dr. Will Bolsowitz, who wrote Fiber Fueled Cookbook or Fiber Fueled book. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but yeah, it literally creates holes in the digestive tract, and it is our job to know that and then to feed it the proper nutrients that can help mend that gut lining and also to get it out of our body. And I know that that's something that you have that you can offer to people. Now, what sort of herbals? You mentioned herbals. Can you elaborate on that at all, of what you like to support the body?
It just really depends, but like fulvic and humic acid are really good for helping. There's different herbal combinations of varying strengths depending on what someone is going through gut-wise. This is where it gets really, really tricky because a lot of times, and I deal with this a lot with like people who are wanting to do parasite cleansing, they're like, oh, just tell me the thing to take. And it's like, it really depends on where your body's at. Like, are you going to the bathroom every day? Because if you are, you're going to require something different from somebody who only goes to the bathroom once a week. And taking the wrong thing can create a lot of chaos. right? And so it's not about going and Googling. It really is about being very, very aware of where your body's at and what the current state is and getting proper recommendations for you. Because otherwise, I mean, I was just speaking with someone yesterday who was like, yeah, when I take certain things, like I'm just on the toilet for hours. I'm like, okay, so we gotta, this is someone who's working with somebody else, not with me. And so I was like, well, there's obviously your body's needing to get rid of stuff, but we don't want it to be at such a state where you can't do the rest of your life because your body goes into such a high detox state, right? So there is a fine art to what to take, when to take it, how to take it. And a lot of it is very, very dependent on the individual.
Okay, so when you mentioned parasites.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a very hot topic. This is a very controversial topic, I find. Some people say, the parasites in our gut are there for a reason. We need to, you know, keep them and not completely destroy the entire population. Some people say parasites don't even exist. And some people are very much into the parasite cleansing. So, what is your approach to parasite cleansing and why do you suggest it for people?
Well, okay, so we're more microbe than we are human, right? But there's a world of difference between a symbiotic relationship between us and microbes. So, like that could be bacteria, viruses, protozoa, any number of organisms that are on our body, in our body. We've got microbes on our skin through it's like every square inch of our body has microbes. Now, the difference is that symbiotic relationship means that there's a give and a take. Parasites are entities which are taking nutrients that are setting up shop within your body and creating chaos to one degree or another, right? They're taking advantage of parasites are attracted to a certain type of environment. They're attracted to a highly, highly acidic environment. And they're going to come into the body on certain things, like most likely, like if you're someone who consumes raw dairy, raw fish, animal products in general, because they create such an acidic environment within the body, that's the perfect hiding ground for parasites. And actually, the parasites come in to try to break down the coagulated and the stagnant environment, but then they just kind of stay for years and for decades. And so every single chronic health condition is connected to parasites. And a lot of times, the way that people feel, the cravings they have, the mood, the thoughts, they're actually the parasites, because what happens is parasites come into the body, they set up shop, they take over the nervous system, and then they really start to manipulate the host and they can drive behavior. Like there is a parasite, I'm totally forgetting the first part, but there is a parasite that actually drives men and women to certain types of, sexual behavior because they get to propagate during when someone has intercourse, right? So they manipulate behavior. There's another type of parasite. Now, I was reading a parasite book. It would have been a couple of years ago, so that's why I'm forgetting the name. But there is a parasite that what it does is it actually takes over the host in such a way, and it drives the host to do really dangerous things.
Kind of hijacks the brain.
Hijacks the brain, taking unnecessary risks, being on a motorcycle at super, super high speeds. And sometimes, now this is kind of on another level. When I see what is happening in the world, I'm convinced that certain individuals have been so hijacked that the decisions they're making that are harming others are because they've actually been infiltrated to that level.
Wow.
And they don't know it. Like most people think like if they have a craving for certain things, it's them themselves that have that craving. And no, it's the parasites that crave the bread, the sugar, the junk, because that helps them to thrive within your internal environment. And in fact, when you start parasite cleansing, and I can say this from firsthand experience, like when I really make an effort of like, okay, I'm getting in there and it's time for you guys to leave, like cravings will get worse. Like I will mysteriously feel depressed for no reason. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, why am I don't have anything to be depressed about. But because I have a meditation practice and I'm so aware of my thoughts, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's the parasites that are unhappy because I take anti-parasitic herbals and their environment is being disrupted and they're on their way out.
Yep.
And sure enough, go to the bathroom, take care of business, and depression mysteriously gone.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So speaking of going to the bathroom, how often do you think people should be going number 2?
Número dos. If you're eating 2 or 3 times a day, you ought to be going to the bathroom 2 or 3 times a day. Someone can even be going to the bathroom once a day and just like technically be constipated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right?
Great.
So yeah, definitely need to be going to the bathroom multiple times a day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we are getting more into, we've talked parasites, we've talked a little autoimmune. Now, what else do you recommend to people just in general for lifestyle? You mentioned plant-based. Why plant-based, and how are other foods creating the acid in the body that aren't plant-based?
So, well, I mean, there are plant-based foods that are also acid forming, right? Like grains and certain legumes, like if they're not sprouted. Well, I mean, it has to do with a few things. Like, first of all, our human body is not designed to be eating animal products. Like, notice my hands, like there's no claws, right? Like, I have no ability. I don't have the natural speed to chase after a squirrel and get it and take it apart limb from limb with my bare hands. Like, we're not designed to be predators, right? That's the first thing. I mean, our GI system is like so long and it's designed for the purposes of absorbing, fiber for the microbes, for the good microbes in our gut that thrive on plant foods. And yeah, animal products and dairy has no fiber, right? Everybody's always worried about protein, and yet 97% of people are fiber deficient.
Right.
And we want to have good variety of fiber in our body so that we can keep our gut microbiome happy. And if our gut microbiome is happy, the rest of our body is happy, right? So that's like just has to do with the design. And then the other thing is that there's, only 2 sides to chemistry, acids and bases, and we're an alkaline species. And so when we're putting a lot of acid forming foods in our body, the fast food, the processed food, the animal products, fish, lots of coffee, alcohol, those kinds of things, and not to mention being in a state of stress, now our body has to try to contend with that, and it's going to start to pull on possibly, like in one person, it might be pulling on calcium to try to neutralize all those acids. In someone else, it could be cholesterol. And it's creating a lot of damage internally. And so our body does best when we're giving it lots of hydrating fruits, and vegetables. And I can tell you, just like I've played around with a lot of diets over the years, and even in like I haven't eaten animals like since 2004. And so I've been on this path a long time, but even in the whole plant-based world for a chunk of time, I was doing more grains, more breads, that kind of stuff. And when I got away from that, and there was a period of time when I was doing my regenerative health training where I was doing just 100% fruits and herbs. And that was actually the best I ever felt in my body. Like I just like, it was, I remember just like walking down the street in my neighborhood, and I felt like I was in a whole different body, right? And that's the thing. It's like, you know, getting away from those acid forming foods, even the ones that are plant based, makes a huge difference for me personally. And every chronic health issue, not only is it connected to parasites, but it's also connected to chronic and systemic lymphatic stagnation, right? So we've got about 75 trillion cells, two fluids, blood and lymph. Blood actually only makes up 20% of the fluids. Lymph is everything else. And your blood is responsible for bringing oxygen and nutrients to your cells and tissues, but your lymph system has to remove the waste products, the metabolic waste, the toxicity, all of the stuff that your body can't actually utilize. And then what happens, what people don't realize is that when they start to experience the aches, the pains, the things just not feeling right, but you go to a doctor and your blood work is normal, but you don't feel good, that is a sign that your lymph system is starting to back up. And I always say to clients, it's like your lymph system has been working so hard since you were in utero because we've been exposed to things in utero. And now, you get into your third, your fourth, your fifth decade of life. It's like the toilet hasn't been flushed your entire life. And all of that is backing up. And that's when people start to experience the autoimmune, skin issues, the aches and pains, just like stuff going on in the body that doesn't feel good. And especially like I have a lot of people who come to me, especially women, they're like, yeah, I went to the doctor, my blood work looks normal. I'm like, well, how do you feel? Well, I don't feel good. Well, the body never lies, right? It's like if there are symptoms, it's showing you that there's an underlying imbalance that has to be addressed. And it always has to do with cleaning up the lymph. And so I can tell you, my body in particular, my lymph tends to be on the sluggish side. And I have to be very conscientious about what I'm putting into my body and making sure that I'm walking and doing yoga and rebounding and doing different things to keep the lymph system clearing out.
Definitely. I would love to know what your top tips are for people that want to start losing weight. Where do you start with that?
Diet. Start with your diet. Like number one, are you eating a diet that has like living foods in it? Is your food packaged and processed? Is it got like so many ingredients in it you can't even pronounce those ingredients? So that's one of the things. 75% of people are also chronically dehydrated, which is also connected to diet, right? So if you're having a lot of packaged and processed foods and fast foods and animal products, like all of those things are very, very dehydrating. When you have a diet that has like more fruits in it, you're automatically going to be putting more hydration into your body.
Mhm.
So those are a couple things. And weight to me is really connected to chronic and systemic inflammation.
Mm.
So if you start to change the internal terrain of your body by addressing your diet, the weight will naturally start to come off. And then the other side of that is, are you moving? Like we are at a time where we just don't move enough. Even for myself, like I work from home, and so I have to make sure that I schedule movement into my day so that I'm not just like sitting at my desk in front of my computer for 8 hours. So there are certain calls where I'm not having to be on a call with a client, but it's related to something else where I'll put in my headphones and I'll go for a walk outside. Um, just like making sure that I'm not sitting for hours and hours and hours on end. And it's like, ever since the invention of the drive-through, like people just don't move,
Yeah,
you know?
it's crazy.
Like your body is made to move. And one of the best things that anyone can do is just go out for a walk every single day. Like do at least 30 minutes, ideally an hour if possible. And if you can't do an hour at once, like just do like 20-minute increments over the course of your day so that it's just constantly keeping your blood circulating, keeping your lymph system going and getting that and also helping to strengthen your muscles and your bones. One of the best things you can do after a meal is actually go outside, go for a walk.
Walking is so meditative for me. It is just true medicine. Uh, and especially when it's outside, it's so great. So, what is a normal day of okay, what does a normal day of eating look like for you?
If I'm not fasting,
Yes, if you're not fasting.
if I'm not fasting, because I do a lot of fasting, um, normally I like to start with one of my green superfood shakes. Like I just love how it tastes. And I feel like it's like putting the energy of the sun right into my body. So I'll usually start with that, and then I'll wait a little bit and then have some fruit. And then I find that I get full, like, I actually think that because I've worked so much on my gut health over the last few years, that my body doesn't need as much nutrition, like doesn't need as much food because what I'm putting in gets better utilized.
Mhm.
And so I just don't need to eat as much. Like I'm not eating, like anytime there's a lot of people in the health space, right? And there's a lot of people who recommend like, oh, 3 meals a day and snacking. Like if you're eating that much, like when do you have time to do anything anything else, right? So I may have that, I'll have that in the morning, and then we always keep fruit on hand, so I'll have like, if I get hungry, I'll go down and grab some fruit. We've got some great grapes in the fridge, so this week, so I'll probably go for some grapes or apples or oranges or whatever it is that we have kicking around. And then late afternoon, I might do like a smoothie of some sort. Usually do a combination of fruits and like different superfoods. And then in the evening, like I made the best salad the other day, and it was just like different kinds of greens and shredded cabbage and carrots and beets, and I will make my own dressing with like lemon and coconut aminos and some ginger. Like I don't really buy salad dressing. So keeping it like really, really basic and or doing like raw wraps of some kind. But I tend to be like fruits and superfoods till dinner time. And then dinner is usually some type of like simple salad or wrap or zoodles or something like that.
So you practice mostly raw.
Yes, I do. I
Same.
have found I've found through trial and error that that's usually how my body feels best.
Yeah.
When I do cooked foods, it just like aches and pains come back pretty quick for me.
Same.
For other people, maybe not.
Yeah. Same. And I also think that it has to do with how a cooked food is prepared. Um, Steamed versus roasted or baked, Um, I think there's more gentle ways where the food can retain some more nutrients and just be more hydrating, kind of more similar to what the raw version would be. But I definitely understand. And as a person that's been plant-based for like 18 or 19 years as well, I've been through all the ways, really haven't done a lot of junk food vegan, but I've been through all the ways of the whole food plant-based eating pattern, and I do find myself feeling the best with mostly raw foods. And I think I found my balance, which is great. So before we wrap this up, Julie, I want to know now, I want to unpack this topic of fasting because you fast often, and it's something that I know you're very passionate about and are a huge believer in. I would like to know where you got started or what started you into fasting and what you practice, because there's so many different types of fasting.
Yeah, so I learned fasting from who I like to call the OG of fasting, which is Dr. Alan Goldhammer. I I went to I went to True North, I guess like almost 4 years ago, and I did like 14 days there of just water. And they use distilled water. Now, when I do my fasting, I don't use distilled water. I usually use molecular hydrogen because I find it to be easier to fast. Um, and I know that a lot of people will do different supplements and some people they say they're water fasting and they're drinking black coffee. No,
Yeah.
that is not water fasting. I don't know what that is. That's like a coffee fast is what that is. So yeah, I like last year I experimented. I think my shortest fast was like 8.5 days, and then my longest was 21. Yeah. But I will say this, like if somebody's planning on doing longer than 48 hours, you must have some kind of medical supervision. Like I'm a practitioner, I know my body well, I know how to prepare for a fast coming in and how to like guide my body back towards eating. And I see a lot of people in the fasting space that are just number one, sharing information that's incorrect and just like doing wild things like being on a water fast but drinking coffee on an empty stomach. And I don't think that most people realize that not only is coffee highly, highly acidic, but when you have it like that on an empty stomach, it can actually damage your stomach lining. It's linked to cancer. So this practice is actually a ridiculous practice to be doing, especially if you're fasting. Um, so I like if it's water, it's just water only, nothing else. I usually will do like several days of prep where I'm going from fruit to juices, like fruits to like juices and superfoods, and then to fasting, and then very, very slowly back towards eating. So like sometimes people will like break their a water fast and they're like, yeah, I had pizza or I had chicken wings. I'm like, well, then why did you fast? That was a total waste of your time.
It really is.
If you're going to destroy your gut like that, when they put in like fat and animal products, which are take days and days for your body to digest. So that's how I fast. And then recently, like this year, I got curious about dry fasting. So I did a like a 5.5 day dry fast at the start of the year, which was very, very interesting. I ended up doing some videos for my YouTube because I'm like, well, since I'm doing this, I might as well share the journey. And it was interesting in terms of like how much energy I still had and how I felt in my body overall. Again, not something that anyone should just jump into because like if someone is like say on the SAD diet where they're eating processed foods and they're eating animal products and then they jump into like a water only protocol, the detox symptoms alone can just like keep you in bed for days. And I've met, like, I remember this one gentleman that I met when I was at True North, and he was miserable the whole time that he was fasting. And the reason was that he did not transition for a long enough period of time before he started fasting. And you have to be 100% plant-based for, I would say, probably a minimum at least a month, if not more, depending on how toxic someone's diet is, because then you're not flooding your body with all of these like additives and preservatives and byproducts that your body is trying to get rid of. So
Yeah, I think that being plant-based really helps with the process. And I would love to know, as we close this, how what is the best way to refeed after you're doing a fast, whether it's a dry fast, a water fast, or even a juice fast?
So I'm sure you've seen like that detox triangle. So like the very, very top of the triangle is water fasting. So let's say somebody's ending a water fast. And this is what I was taught by Dr. Goldhammer, which is that you would want to go back to juices first. And depending on how long you fasted, like let's say I did a 7-day water only. I'd want to do at minimum at least a day just on juices. I like to start with the green juices first. So for like some mineral support, and then maybe like with some fruit juices that have some greens in it, like cucumber or celery, something like that, like a apple, celery, ginger combo is really, really good. Um, and then getting into like hydrating fruits like watermelon, different types of melons, oranges, that kind of stuff. When I did my 21-day water only last year, I broke it with like watermelon and watermelon juice. And that was okay because I think like watermelon itself is like, well, it's mostly water. you know? So I did that for a few days and then started to bring in other types of fruits and then into veggies, veggies and sprouts. I'm also like very, very intuitive. Like I find that when I do fast, there is the physical component, but the longer I fast, it really becomes way more spiritual and meditative. And so I get downloads and direction of like, okay, do this, don't do this,
Yeah.
right? So it's not so much of like formulaic of like, oh, this is the recipe. It's very much guided by what I'm instructed to do. And for me, fasting really is more and more about connecting to source and higher consciousness. Like the physical benefits are just like a nice little byproduct, but for me, it's really more of like getting those downloads, you know?
I definitely resonate with that. And something that I look forward to challenging myself to do is to not only practice water only or even a dry fast once per week, probably water only. I'm not going to do a dry fast once a week. I want to fast in some way every week intentionally so that I can implement it. But I have a deep inner knowing and an intuition that as I go further on this journey, that it's going to be so much more about the spiritual aspect than it is about the physical and the mental benefits that I'm going to get. So I'm
Yeah, so I do want to say to that, like it's really, really important that when someone is considering fasting, like fasting it's not for everyone,
Mhm.
right? Like, so if someone's like pregnant or breastfeeding, like for women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, like definitely not the time to be doing a fast. Anyone who has adrenal issues, I would not recommend fasting. If you're going through a period of like extreme stress or trauma, not the time to experiment with this. This is something where you really want to set up a safe space and a safe container for yourself. So that means like really slowing down your workload, right? Having time daily to really rest, not be like the usual go, 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 go. And I mean, if you think about it, like fasting is a part of every single culture. There is a tradition, like it's only in modern times where we've been told that we need to be eating. Like most people overeat, they're overfed, they're undernourished, and they've got so much fat on their body that their body, like so many fat stores on their body, that their body actually never has a chance to utilize them. And and our our species would have gone through periods of time where food was not accessible. So we were forced to fast, whether we liked it or not. And for me, like on the physical side, it's like when you stop that intake of food, it really allows your body to go into like a deeper state of autophagy and really clean up the metabolic waste and the mess that's in the body. And then on the mental side, you know, there is that connection to higher consciousness and source, like because there is this deep internal quiet. Like my meditations go so deep when I fast. My sleep is like the fast that I just completed, like I was getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night because my body didn't want any more, but I was spending 50% of that in deep sleep.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. So it's powerful. Is it for everyone? No, but and it's also a really good way to like reorder your relationship with food. Like for people who are addicted to food, like that's all you think about, the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. Like fasting really forces you to question what it is that you're doing. And the other thing I will also say is like, um, you get to like when the cravings come up, you get to really ask, like back to the parasites, like what are the where are those cravings coming from? Like what are the entities that are attached to those cravings?
So powerful. I I really resonate also. I just want to add, I just left a fasting retreat and I actually didn't fast. And this is a really good message for, I mean, I did, but in a different way. I was on coconut water and I was having ample amount of calories to support my body. And I went into it knowing that if I felt my nervous system was in a state of distress, which I am going through a lot in my life currently, and I am just, I honor what I need very deeply. It's so important to me. And sometimes fasting can tip tip off the nervous system, even though it can also downregulate it. It can do both, right? So we need to know where we're at in our own body, in our own mind, so that we are in a supportive state. And while everybody else was fasting on either water or dry fasting, I chose to do the coconut water because I knew that it just wasn't the time. So potentially, maybe I tap into a little bit more fasting when I go to India in March. I'm going to the International Yoga Festival, and I think that that will be a good time to, maybe go every other day and just see what I can do, and or just, just honor where I'm at. But I'm really glad that you mentioned that and that people need to be ready for it and have supervision as needed if they're going to decide to do this, especially from a very toxic place. So,
Yeah, it's also like it's interesting because I've worked with clients now for 8 years, not actually going on 9 years, and I've never ever put fasting in anyone's protocol ever, because there are so many other ways that we can get to the root of chronic health issues and dis-ease within the body. Now, I'm somebody who fasts because I am called to fast. It's coming internally. It's not someone external to me that's saying you must do this. It's always been my own curiosity in exploring what is possible for my body. And so I really do think that in terms of fasting, that has to be an internal call, and it cannot be about ego. It cannot be about like, oh, well, so and so person did so many days, so I'm going to try and beat that number. Like it cannot be about the those kinds of ego metrics at all. It really does have to be something, it's sacred. It really is a sacred practice. And it's something that's become very, very popularized. And some people utilize it as a way of managing their weight, but they don't address the disordered eating that they have and the broken relationship they have with food. So they'll do a fast, they'll lose a few pounds, and then they'll go back to the habits that created the problem. and then do that again. That is not how to utilize fasting. It's that's not something I support or celebrate. And in fact, like with this most recent fast I did share about it on social media, and I want to explore this type of fasting further. But the next time I do it, I'm not going to talk about it publicly, because there is something about going into this kind of container and keeping it sacred and being on the journey with yourself and with a higher power. And and especially in the time and the space that we're in, where all of these eyes are on us and they're watching what we're doing. Like, I come from a really pure place, but I'm well aware of the fact that some people that might be seeing my social media content, or seeing what I'm doing, they're not coming from that pure place, and they're giving me this energy that I don't need while I'm trying to be in this container of healing and self-exploration. And so, yeah, that came to me very clearly on this most recent fast. I was like, okay, the next time I do it, no one needs to hear about it. No one needs to know. And maybe I'll do a video afterwards to talk about the experience, to give guidelines. But I don't want anyone's negative, or what we call evil eye. I don't need people's evil eye on my business.
Yes.
You
Wow.
know?
So powerful. So powerful. Such a good message to not only close this out, but to also just say that is incredibly important. No matter if you're fasting or not, just surrounding yourself with people who are supportive, like-minded, on the journey of growth as well, and honor each step of the way, and just knowing that everybody's path is so very different. And it's really amazing to get to know you more, Julie, and to be in your ecosystem of enlightenment. It's an honor, and I'm very thankful that we got to share this time together, and that we got to learn more about you and how you help people and how you serve humanity. So it's very beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
Mhm.